Is it warocracy or autocracy? Or what type of crazy is that? Except crazy.
News making the headlines.
Black Maria is to carry criminals, treasure looters that are in government today.
Sometimes it gets confrontational.
Slap you in the face.
Excuse me, don't put words into my mouth.
Whatever it is that will bring our military to disrepute, I say to hell
On
with it.
Core Digest,
I want to know why I should be believing them.
every weekday, we bring all of these together and take them to the court of public opinion,
Everybody has a right in Nigeria.
where you are the judge.
And thank you so very much for staying with us in the program Core Digest. Like I said before we took the break, we're discussing the education sector in Nigeria. And interestingly, this is actually a part 2 of what we discussed earlier last week, as we spoke with stakeholders who were actually the most affected when it comes to education, the students actually, and they expressed their concerns on what they think the Nigerian education system should really be about, while talking about the challenges they face as students, and what they think of those implementing the education, looking at the teachers, the lecturers, and of course the government who is in charge of regulating the entire system. And now, speaking of education in Nigeria, we find out that when people talk about the education system in Nigeria, they talk about, oh, the education system is failed, the fact that some students graduate and they talk about them being unemployable, and we're tired of hearing cliches like this, because if nothing is done to address this issue, we'll keep going to be talking about the same issue over and over again without any concrete solution to the problem. And while education is power, people see education in Nigeria as a case study for 2 reasons. Some see education as a means of how to better their life, more like improve their particular status from where they are building their minds through knowledge, while others see education as a means to get a better job when they leave the 4 walls of the school, of the university, or wherever. And students actually pick the schools they want to attend for different reasons. Some would pick a school because of the amounts paid in the school, while some will go for a cheaper one with very good standard. Others will go for a more expensive one because it's about the swag, it's about what school I graduated from. Others will look at the pedigree of the school. Regardless of how cheap it is, as long as the alumni of that school are very sound, they want to go to such schools. And the last category will go to a school because of the perceived quality the school has. And so some schools are just beyond schools. They are actually a brand. But summing up the whole process, looking at the education system, particularly as the struggle continues, we want to see how Nigeria has fared over the years in handling this sector, and what the current administration should see as important in implementing in this sector to make it a whole lot better, especially as we celebrate change in this time of our lives as Nigerians. And analyzing this issue with me is an educationist, one who I would call an academic herself, because she has gone through this field over, and so she's an authority in this particular case as we discuss education in Nigeria. And the guest for today is Antoniette Omosage. Antoniette Omosage is the director of Christ the Redeemer's College. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, it's nice having you on the program. Now, let's kickstart education system in Nigeria. For you, in your opinion, how far are we fared in handling education?
Many years ago, I would say my answer to that would be, we have a very good educational policy, and if we were to follow it faithfully, we would have very well educated young people. Unfortunately, implementing our policies have never been our forte as a nation. And so we have a situation where the education policy, not the core content of the policy, but quite a bit of the policy has been tampered with so often in the past few years that I can assure you quite a few people are not even sure what the policy says anymore. And so people are just off doing whatsoever they want, and like we would say from a biblical perspective, it's like the time of the judges in Israel when everybody did as he pleased because there was no king in Israel. That's the way it appears with our educational system. Everybody just runs off and does their own little thing. And so it's as though we don't have a policy at the moment, and it's affected everything. Yeah, you mentioned the fact that the graduates are coming out, they're unemployable. And the question we should ask ourselves is, why are they unemployable? Because we're getting graduates who don't have any content substance. They're going to school, they're learning things, but are they really learning things that are relevant in today's world? I mean, the things they need in order to survive. And then, of course, there's also the impracticality of our educational system. We're feeding our children with information, but we're not teaching them to do anything with it. Students go to school and they tell me, oh, I studied sociology. And I said, okay, fine. What did you plan to do with this? What are the avenues for you to use sociology? As a graduate of sociology, what do you plan? What was your plan? What were you thinking when you went into it? So we don't have all those in place. And then, you know, at a point, I remember when Dr. Obieze Kosili was Minister of Education, she started a trend, and I had thought that trend would continue. And that was, hey, let's teach our students, when they leave school, they should have a skill. And that is very important, but we didn't follow through on that. That entire process, I think, lasted just the entire period she was minister, and as soon as she was out of there, so when the policy, but it was a good idea, because let's teach the students a skill so that if they leave school, everybody shouldn't be waiting for government to give them a job.
All right. Now, you're an expert in curriculum development, which many see as a very serious thing affecting, challenging the education system, the way the curriculum is being handled, and what really makes up the curriculum of the education system in Nigeria. So for you as an expert, what do you see as wrong in the way our curriculums are, really?
Well, the core curriculum of any country should be the mandate that we want to give to our schools. Our curriculum is government's mandate on what you want the children to come out to have, what you want them to have. And then what we've done with our curriculum, there's so much that we've done with it. I call it tampered with it. For example, we're asking the students to learn a subject called civic education. Civic education was taken out of social studies, which is a subject in its own, a very strong, powerful subject in itself, which other nations have used to build their nations. Now, we then decided to pull civic education out of it and create it as a subject on its own. We're talking about citizenship training, but it's like taking just one topic and then creating it into something. Now we've made it a core subject, which now in senior secondary school, for example, civic as a core subject doesn't translate into anything for the students going into university. JAM doesn't have a civic subject. So students who want to do humanities, they are limited by the fact that they have to do civic, which they cannot use at the university level. Students who want to do science are limited again because they have this one extra subject that they can't do anything with. It's going to die with the school certificate exam. And when you do things like that, you limit the information the children have. There used to be an argument that, oh, our students study too wide. I've never been one to believe that, because I believe that children at the age at which when they are in school have the capacity to learn and learn, varied things. And this is the opportunity they have to be exposed to a lot of things. How you expose them to it is also all part of what the curriculum should provide. Now, what ends up happening is we've got a curriculum that's been tampered with, so many things have been taken out of it. For example, the social studies curriculum now has nothing in it that teaches our children about our geography as a nation, has nothing in it that teaches them about our history. So for junior school students from primary 1 through 6, from GSS 1 to 3, they're not learning any Nigerian history, they're not learning any geography, unless the schools themselves, if you just stay with the national policy, the national curriculum, you're not going to do any of those things because you'll be totally outside. But if schools, and that's why schools will now say, oh, we enhance our curriculum, we work on it. If they don't do that, then there are lots of information the children will never get anymore.
So who is not doing his job in this area?
The Federal Ministry of Education. They're not monitoring, because the Federal Ministry does not write, they don't write the policy, the education, the curriculum. The NERDC does. But these days, I'm not sure what NERDC is really writing, because I've looked through the curriculum and I'm quite disappointed at what I've seen in it. It's very shallow. You know, we're trying to bring in what they call relevant topics. But you see, relevant topics will make no sense if the child doesn't have a historical background to those so-called relevant topics. You want to talk about things that are happening today, then you have to start from the beginning and give them a background. A lot of things we're teaching our children now are just standalone issues that have a background. They're basis for some of the things that are happening today that we need to take the children back and say, okay, this is what used to be, and this is what has happened because of, and then you go on like that way. That's what curriculum is always been a spiral thing. You start with a little bit of information and you're supposed to build it up, and it expands as it goes up.
And how about, do you see our curriculum as dynamic enough to move with the ongoing trend? Say, for example, where the country is currently grappling with insurgency. How about including maybe managing terrorism as part of the curriculum? Say, for example, we're quite developing ICT improvement, like we saw the NUC, we saw Mike Omeri saying that there should be something like patriotism studies where Nigerians will actually be a lot more patriotic. So do you see that as...
You see, but that's the whole point. These are topics. These are topics that are, they're current topics that definitely schools should address them. But when you now make them, like, government now has a subject called national consciousness. That's a standard. That's an issue. Yes, insurgency. It's an issue. It's a topic children need to know about. They need how to relate to issues around. But those are all things that come into existing subjects already. Why create a brand new subject to talk about insurgency? How long are we going to do that? You know, we're taking, and then everything becomes, every issue that's happening in the world suddenly becomes a topic that must stand alone and be treated as though it's the only thing happening. We're taking issues out of in isolation and trying to make big deals out of them. ICT, the whole world has gone ICT. Definitely. All of these things we're even teaching must come to the children now from a technological point of view, because that's the way the children, today's children, relate to the world in terms of technological information. That is the world. So our teaching must be relevant to that. We should be presenting this information to children, you know, with every ICT gadget we can find. There is no problem with that. But when we now begin to talk about specific subjects, patriotic studies, for example, in primary school, everything we do should spell patriotism to the children. When I teach my children to honor the Nigerian flag, I'm teaching patriotism. When I talk glowingly about our heroes, all our heroes, from every part of the country, I'm teaching patriotism. When I tell them the story of our nation, and we do have a story, beginning with the empires that make up modern day Nigeria, I am teaching them patriotism. But we've taken all of that out, and we want to talk about patriotism from a very clinical point of view. It's not going to be relevant. It's not going to make any difference in the children.
Speaking of the quality of education we have now, usually we would have people who are pretty older than us talk about, oh, it used to be good in Nigeria at some point. Education was this, education was that. And we do not even see an iota of that happening. And the school of thought will say that the increase in private schools have actually killed the public system of education. Do you quite agree?
I don't quite agree with that the private schools have killed the public schools. I think the dogged, you know, following of the policy, which changes every day, is what has killed the public schools. And then government allowed education to be politicized. That's really where education began to die in Nigeria. when it became a case of, okay, if I belong to one party and my state is not part of the ruling party, then I'm not going to do whatever the ruling party says we should do with education. That's where things really began to go crazy. So, when we're starting the junior secondary, junior / the senior secondary school program, for example, we had what? Was it an MPN? We had an MPN country, as it were. MPN was the ruling party. UPN was not. And so most UPN states did not start that program when they were supposed to start. This is something I was very involved in because I was working then, you know, in NERC, what they then NERC, now NERC. So it was, they didn't start. And from one state to the other, you would go to various states and you find that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So everybody, like I said, it was the days of the judges and people just did what they liked. So the moment we politicize education to the point where politicians are making political statements concerning education, oh, education in our state is totally free, then they give the children 4 exercise books and uniforms. And parents who have no understanding that education is much more than 4 exercise books and 1 uniform, you know, would run off and say, okay, we're voting for this party because they're giving us this. That's not education. And people shouldn't be allowed. I think Nigerians should be saying, look, don't put education as one of your, unless you give us a very strong mandate for this is what we're going to do with education. You leave it at that, and it says the whole country must work. Because the moment you start with, there are some states in this country, when you see certificates from any of their schools, whether it's primary 6 or, and it's come from the states, you don't have any respect for it. Because those states, their educational standard is so low that the children come to secondary school or go to the university, they can barely read.
Now, what does this say about the regulation of the sector as it is?
That's the point. No implementation. Even the private schools are not being properly, you know, monitored. So if nobody is monitoring education, the body that's supposed to monitor the education system is not being well funded. And if you don't fund your inspectorate and ensure that there's somebody to keep an eye on what's going on, then who's going to give a report that says, okay, we're doing well or not doing well? People pay off inspectors in the Ministry of Education, you know, they pay them off, you know, don't bother to come to our school, we're fine. Both private schools and public schools, they all do that. And I say to myself, so there is no monitoring body, and people are just, you know, coming up with ideas and doing whatever they like, and then the monitors go there and they just sit back and say, oh, well, you know, that is not going to give us what we want. We want children who are going to come out of school, they have knowledge, which we're very good at giving knowledge in this place. We're good at that. But translating that knowledge into wisdom so that they can use it is another thing. And children need to learn skills. The present curriculum says we should all learn a trade. But a lot of schools are not doing that either. Why? Because number one, there are no teachers for it. But, you know, I like to tell people, I say, look, don't stomp your feet and say, I don't know what to do, I don't. They said you should teach the children vulcanization, okay? Automech and all that.
Yeah.
Go to the local mechanic and bring the local mechanic in. Tell him to show the children how to do it. And then get your Introtech teacher who can read the curriculum and say, okay, they need to know this one about. Do the theory in class with your trained teachers and get the local person in to teach them. Leather goods, go to the cane village. Get somebody there to come and teach the children how to do the real thing. And then have your teacher go through the curriculum. There are no teachers for any of these subjects. 35 of them. Trades that we're supposed to teach. Nobody's teaching it.
All right. While a lot of people would say that teachers are not really doing a very good job because they would link it to lack of motivation, the fact that their take home is not even enough to take them home, and it really has an adverse effect on the students who are at the receiving end.
Yes.
So what can you say about more like, is it rebranding the sector to make the teachers a lot more motivated, especially for you as someone who is passionate about teaching right from day one? So, and these days we have teachers who are just there for the job, for the pay, and they're not there for the children really.
Yeah, well, you know, there's something about teaching. I always tell people there are lots of criminals in the teaching profession because they're just there for all the wrong reasons. They're either there because it's a safe way There's some women who are teaching because it's the only job where you can get a holiday, and then not only that, you can go home and get home early to go and take care of your babies. All the wrong reasons. But having said that, number one, where are we training our teachers? And who is training our teachers? We're training them from the same pool that we're also using to do everything else to create education, and the pool is already infested. So you are training teachers who are really coming out. They themselves have not been well prepared to teach. I recently had an interview in our school. We started out with a list of, shortlisted number of about 70 people. And then that is after hundreds of applications, we shortlist 70. The 70 come in to write a test. Deliberately, we give them SS2 promotion exam. A B.Ed biology teacher writes an exam and scores 8%. The exam SS2s just did 8%. A chemistry teacher, that one gets 11%. Then, of course, he writes a lesson note, and I can barely read through it. And I'm not going to put that in my classroom, because right there and there, he doesn't even have the contents, the information he wants to teach. That's number one. He doesn't have the teaching methodology with which he wants to teach. But he just came out of a teacher training university. So it's not, yeah, the products coming out of these places are not good enough for the system. But then again, you can't blame the young people there, because who are these universities? Right now, we've got a proliferation of universities all over the place. And I keep saying to myself, I say, where are all the lecturers going to come from? The lecturers are sort of like circulating all around the same place. So you've got a lecturer who's teaching at one university, and he's a guest, what do they call them now? He's on sabbatical at one university, so he's teaching another one, and then he does part-time in another one. So if he's not teaching very well here, what's the chance that he's going to do better here, or in the third place where he's also doing part-time? So there is a lot wrong with the way we're doing things, and I think it's more of the attitude of Nigerians basically to everything.
Okay, so how about the teachers who are really passionate about teaching, but the pay they get is not really encouraging them, because they also have responsibilities, the children and the family. So why the value for education suddenly dropped?
The value for education on the part of who, the teachers or the parents?
I mean the institution managing education, really, because School of Thought would say teachers should even be the highest paid in the country.
We've been saying that since the days of my parents. My parents were teachers. And teachers have never been well paid.
Is it because their reward is in heaven?
So we were told. But like, it's one, you see, this whole, I always tell myself, I said, look, if we start thinking about our work and think about what we're being paid, we'll all just pack our bags and go home. We'll be better off going farm in the village. And then you'll know that at least if I'm living from hand to mouth, it's because what I grow is what I'm going to eat. But once we come into the city and say we want to teach, we're going to have to leave some things behind. This is what I really want to do with my life. I want to impact generations. It's going to be a thankless job, because for teachers it's really a thankless job. Because sometimes you're doing it with all your passion, with all your heart. Some teachers are doing it that well, and still, nobody's really appreciating them. But I know for sure that a lot of teachers get a lot of joy out of seeing their products years later. That's when they get a joy. But then what do we do about getting them paid properly? I think our entire, the whole monetary thing needs to be restructured. Of course, it goes without saying, the world is a changing place, and so there is no reason why teachers should be so poorly paid. There is no reason for it, really. And we need to fund education a lot more than we're doing right now. Education is not properly funded. I don't know what the percentages are anymore. I forgot, I haven't checked in recent times. But basically, as a nation, we haven't funded education as well as we should. If education is properly funded and the money is channeled, you see, it's one thing, okay, if you're not even being properly paid and the conditions of service for which you're, for the job are, are decent, you're not going to spend so much time being, you will be happy doing the job. You'll be happy. There's a school I pass by every day when I'm coming from my school. If I'm going anywhere, I pass by that school. Until this last school year, it was companies around that area that decided, I don't know what happened, but I think the local community were able to finally get them. Those children have been in that school. There was no roof for about 5 years. This is within the Ogun State area. No roof in the school. Now we're talking about the age of technology. The children in that primary school will never see a smart board. They are never going to probably see, we're talking about iPads and all that. Their school is not electrified in the first place. It was only last year that Good Samaritans finally put up, rebuilt 2 blocks for them and gave them a borehole. That's a school. It's a primary school. Your first experience with school, and it's that bad. And every time I pass through the place, you know what I see the teachers are doing? They're sitting outside in the veranda, just outside. And they're talking to the children from the outside inside. And I said to myself, these are teachers too. But I look at them and I feel sad, because the place where they're going to work, it's not a conducive place.
Really encouraging them.
So they can't work to their satisfaction. I'm sure they probably have to buy their own chalk, buy their own pencils and biros if they're going to do the work at all, because all those things will not be available. It saddens me that we treat, and then we complain. You see, that's a funny thing. We complain that the children are not doing well. They don't have books. I'm not sure that school has any books in it. I've never been into the rooms. From what I see from the outside, it doesn't look as if they would have any books, because there's no place to keep anything.
Now, speaking of funding the schools, some Nigerians will say that some products of some certain primary, secondary schools are the people we see today as great politicians, great leaders with a whole lot of wealth. But what we find out is there's no way of giving back to the school. And the schools that former president have finished from is as bad as it was when it was then at that time.
Again, that's because quite often we have not begun to teach our children the spirit of giving back. Because there's something you have to teach children. When you're raising your child, for example, you teach your child, yeah, you do this, and you also have to learn to give back something. At our school, for example, my students of 2 years ago, the set of 2 years ago, decided of their volume, because every year we do something for our local community. And over the years, we've just done something small, and we'll do something small. We'll go and help them because they don't have water. So the school piped water to a place where they could come and get it from the school and all that. But this particular set decided, principal, because every year we do a health, a community health, a free community health for the people, where the children are the ones who actually do most of the running around, and we go out there, we give them the service. And then another set came to me and said, well, principal, can we build a clinic, a health clinic? And I'm like, okay, go put up your proposal. I was amazed. They did. They put up the proposal. And I said, where are we going to get the money from? We're going to, put in some of our own money, and we're going to ask our parents, we're going to ask anybody and everybody. And that was exactly what they did. And we actually built a 3-room health center. Then we tried to give it to the government, and they wouldn't take it from me. It's sitting there, empty. Another set has decided, okay, we need borehole, we need water for that place. So they put in a borehole just before they left school in July. So the place now has a borehole, it has water. They bought a generator for the place, and another set of students. And I'm just trying to encourage them that you have to give something back. When you are somewhere and you're going away, make it better than when you left. That is something we train our children with, and it's a training. But people in our society, we've never been trained that you just go use whatever you want to use and go away.
And dump it. All right, now let's look at the students themselves. What, in your opinion, can be done to improve the student performance in the qualification examinations like WAEC, GCE, NECO, and JAM, for example?
Well, first of all, let's start with what we're teaching them, how we're teaching them. Getting students to improve in performance is a factor of the persons teaching them. We've already said the teachers themselves are lacking some. And then there's also the factor of the way we do these exams. And sometimes I worry about how are they even being marked. Because there are some years that, every year WAEC tells us, oh, the result this year is not very good, it's very poor, this and that. And then I ask myself, what happened? The whole country has a poor result. Why? What is going wrong?
If you see 61% fail English and maths in this WAEC they just wrote.
Okay. 61%?
61%.
Well, the question then you ask yourself is, okay, what happened with the English language? Is it the teachers? Because you see, before a child goes into an exam, somebody taught the child. But then another question is, how was it marked? What was the marking, what was the standards that were used? So there are lots of things that go into performance. If we cannot begin to strategize from the very beginning as to, okay, what exactly are we striving for? What do we want? Just telling me that 61% of the children in the nation who wrote an exam did not pass a particular subject is very disturbing, because it says more than what's wrong with the curriculum to start with. Are we teaching outside the curriculum? Are we not teaching the curriculum at all? Or in this case, let's talk about the syllabus now. Is the exam syllabus different from what we're teaching the children? Because those are all things that the factors that really affect how children perform. And it's always very disturbing when results like that come out and you start trying to figure out, okay, what could have gone wrong? And unfortunately, WAEC doesn't really give us a proper analysis, so we don't know what
went wrong.
Yeah, what went wrong. We just hear these very globally said things, and then and they won't answer you, no matter what. We sometimes try to contest WAEC results, and we don't get a response from WAEC, which is very disturbing. Because if you want to fix what went wrong, let's start with, okay, let's see how you marked the papers. Okay, what is it that should have been done that wasn't done? Is it a problem that there's a difference between what is in the syllabus and what is in the curriculum and what was taught to the children?
So now you're really saying it's not really the student's fault for failing this way?
Well, when you say a student's fault in failing an exam, what would be the student's fault? They didn't write in the exam hall? Is it that they chose not to write anything in the exam hall? Or that they didn't know what they were supposed to write? So usually I wouldn't normally look at it from the students. Once the children they have written the review, you've prepared children, they went to the exam hall and they did it. If the children did everything they should have done and teachers claim they did everything they should have done, then let's also look at it globally. What could have gone wrong? Because, okay, if one school didn't do well, we'll say, well, maybe that school has a problem. But if you're saying 61%, then we all need to sit down and look at it. Those are a lot of children from a lot of different places. So what is the problem?
All right. Now, these days in the education system, we see that vocational studies, well, which is not all schools that practice it, but some schools have taken vocational studies as the next line or for students to look into, and which is quite laudable. But the question is, how praised is vocational studies? How well do we celebrate people with vocational skills in Nigeria? Because a practical example are the students in polytechnics who have all the know-hows, but they still are discriminated when it comes to getting a job with BSc holders who are basically taught theory and a little of practical. So what really is the future for those who really want to, I think I just want to go for this. What is my gain at the end of the day? Okay,
let me try and explain something to you. The original 6334 National Policy on Education, what government had in mind was, when you've done 6 years of primary school, you do another 3 years of secondary education that terminates what we call basic education. Okay? Now, at the end of basic education, the idea was you can then make a choice. If you want to go in the technical vocational direction, you're welcome to do that. If you want to go straight into an academic environment, fine. But then Nigerians, like you said, they have a thing about vocational. That means he doesn't know book. So, that's why he's going to vocational. Anybody who goes to a vocational school in Nigeria is considered to be less intelligent. So, therefore, there is a complete block in our minds about vocational schools. We wanted to start a vocational school in our system, and I remember going to several television stations to talk about the start of this technical school, vocational school we wanted to start, and nobody wanted to come. I had presenters like you who literally laughed me off the set, thinking, so it's my child that should go to a vocational school while your own goes to university. I'm like, that's not the point. For example, most people do not know, and I don't know why the MBT does not make more noise about themselves. We have a national board for technical education. Okay? But because they work in all the technical schools, that is the technical secondary schools we have in the country, we have federal technical secondary schools. Nobody wants to talk about them. But they write an exam that is an equivalent of, say, WAEC, and they can go into the university with an MBTE certificate, secondary certificate. You can go into the university. But most people don't know that. And nobody wants to take that. The NAPTEC exam is just as relevant. But because of our traditional understanding of vocational schooling or vocational education, we treat anybody who has done technical work as though the person is not very smart. When we're going to start the sex school I talked about, somebody actually brought me an 18-year-old child. The child had failed out of some of that program, and they thought, okay, since I say it's a vocational school, those are the kinds of people I must be taking. I said, no, I'm taking them as JSS 1, and I'm going to work with them until they... And, it was a struggle until then government came up and said, okay, every child must now learn a trade, which is what we had been doing in that school that we started. So we ended up merging the schools. But the point I'm trying to make is that it is a mindset of Nigerians, and until we stop thinking like that way, we're going to continue to have people not wanting to do anything technical. But I tell my children in our school, I said, look, you have to learn to do things for yourself. There are places you're going to get in the world where you can't run off to a mechanic every day. That's a lot of money. I don't know how much it costs to service cars. Most Americans don't service their cars anyway. They do it themselves. That's a Saturday morning assignment. So the children who are doing auto mech in my school now, most parents have testified that I don't service my car anymore. My son does it, or my daughter does it, because he learned it in school.
So in essence, it's a wake-up call for employers of labor to stop the discrimination, really.
It doesn't make any sense to me when you have somebody who is better at doing the work, and you have somebody who can only just sit down and do the brain work, but can't use his hands. What's the point? The person can go and theorize all they want, say, okay, go into the university and go and teach, But we want people who are going to be practical. Our children are not being taught to be practical. I would like children who come out of the university and realize that, oh, I don't, and that's what most of the private universities are doing now. Their students come out of their universities, they have a first class, but they want to work for anybody. Why? Because they know they have a skill they can sell.
All right. Okay, thank you. We just want to take a short break on the program now, but do well to join us after this break as we continue our discussion on education in Nigeria. And after the break, we'll be looking more at the policies Nigeria has in the education system, how beneficial or dangerous it is to the system. And we would also have you join us through the phone-in to give your contribution or questions for our guest on the show. Join us after this break, and we'll be right back.
Some pundits believe that as long as the political system is driven by selected few, corruption may be difficult to fight.
You should be careful about what you say I am not the only politician. Even if I'm wrong, if I've wronged anyone, it's time to forgive me.
Please for Arena every Sunday at 9:15 p.m. and a repeat broadcast every Tuesday 1:30 p.m.
This is what the people are saying.
You don't run a big economy with generator. They need to do more in terms of energy and power.
Many things to do for this Nigeria about lights, water, and new TT.
For Nigerians that are not gullible, we know that good laws have done nothing good for this country.
Buhari won the election convincingly.
Talk to our husband that you should keep promise about what you said, and because people are watching you, you know, another election is coming.
Because some people will stand for Yoruba land, will be strong man, you don't die.
This nation is moving forward. The best is going to take place.
The people giving voice to the voiceless.
Thank you so very much for staying with us. It's called Digest on Core TV News, and the topic we're looking at is education in Nigeria passing through the eye of a needle. Like a lot of students will say, it's more like very difficult to get education in this part of the world, but to some it's really not a problem. And so our guest on the show is an education expert. She's the director of Redeemers College, and she has more to tell us on this certain sector. And now we'll be looking at the policies that we see come up in the education system. The recent one which actually led some parents and their children alike to protest, but thankfully the federal government intervened in time, was the fact that the JAMB was going to reassign students to tertiary institutions against their will. What's your take on that?
My take on that is, I don't know why we make these policies without testing them first. Somebody sleeps and wakes up and decides, oh, well, let's do this, and then we just run off and do it without taking into consideration the various things that could come from that. We've done it with the Unity schools, and we ended up having a lot of issues with the Unity schools. So we do cut-off points and this and that, try to redistribute children. It's all about unity, that they move them around, and it just created a whole lot of problems. We need to be more careful, particularly when it comes to moving young people around. I wouldn't want anybody, for example, moving my teenage daughter from, I picked a school of my choice. This is where I want my daughter to go. There must be a reason why I have decided on that particular area for my child, and then some government body comes and tells me, no, let her go to so place. I think that's inappropriate. It's not right. In other parts of the world, usually parents, there's a season in America where it's called college rounds, where families are going from one college, from one states to the other, checking out colleges, universities that they want their children to go to. It's part of it's the rite of passage for 18-year-olds in America that their parents are going to do college rounds. Unfortunately for us, our parents are not even that involved. We just say, okay, university or so and so, that's a good one, you go there. Some parents don't go bother to get up and go and check. But for those of us who would like to know where our young people are going to, and I want my child in a place where I can wake up in the morning and say, I am going to go and see my child, and I can get there. That's why we make choices. At least I want to believe that's why parents make the choices they make. And the fact that, okay, the course you want is better at this university or that university. Because just moving a child around at the whim of a government policy is really not right, and it's not fair to the child.
All right. Now, in addressing the problem we have at our hand, because we see millions of students who finished secondary education and they want to go to universities, and when they write this JAMB examination, we find out that at the end of the day, a lot a whole lot, thousands, do not gain admission because the schools come up with the fact that, oh, they have had the capacity to the brim. And private universities who the NUC say are not well accredited are not helping matters. So what should really be, what would be the solution to a student who needs tertiary education and the problem is the institutions are not available for them to go?
Well, there'll always be there is a population education. There's a population explosion as far as that is concerned, because there is a limited number of good universities available to the large number of students who want to go. That's a problem. Okay, but having said that, we also need to be aware that we can't have everything at once for everybody. And so sometimes I say to people, there needs to be something. And besides, a lot of the young people who are ready to go into the university right now are probably even too young to get in, or shouldn't be getting it at 16. They shouldn't be getting it at 17. But that's what's happening, so that there are those who will now be outside who should be in and can't get in. So maybe there needs to be, number one, stricter policies on what constitutes entrance into university, for starters. And then, do we create more universities? I don't think that's a solution. The proliferation of universities is not going to solve the problem, because like you said, most of them are unaccredited, and a lot of family parents are not even aware that certain universities are not accredited, so they send children to those places. When they come out, the certificates are useless.
Okay, let's just speak this first caller.
Okay.
Hello, good morning. Oh, we just lost the call. Please just call back and dial the number showing on your screen, and do well to turn down the volume of your TV set so that we could hear you clearly on the show. All right, you were saying that more universities shouldn't be created, so
No,
what should be done instead?
Maybe there needs to be, I don't know what to call it, a holding tank for, because there are so many things that we would all want to do. If we cannot just open universities at whim, there must be something else that students, these young people can be doing. Maybe there needs to be a program that allows young people to learn to do something, a work program, where they are learning to do some kind of.
All right, let's just
skill.
pick this call. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, please, you need to be a little more louder. I can hardly hear you.
Okay, I've been watching your program for a while.
Okay. Yes, tell us your name and where you're calling from to start with.
My name is Austin. I'm calling from Agege.
Austin from Magodo. Agege. All right, go ahead, Austin.
Yes, I don't want to make this observation. I don't know the people that are in charge of this curriculum thing. I noticed that some of these subjects we do in secondary school, like for example, GSS classes, the people is for the students in GSS classes, a lot of them start from grade 9. Grade 9. And the students they are made to go through appear too heavy for them. Let's take a business study for example. In business studies, they are supposed to learn the primary aspect of the bank, writing, commerce, and office practice within 3 years.
Yeah.
And because of the continuous nature of the subject, the students are put under pressure.
Okay.
They learn so much within a short time. And you see these children are about 9 years, some of them 9 years, some of them 10 years, before getting into secondary school.
Okay.
So it's so pathetic. When you are putting these children, you can see all over them that what you are making them to pass through is too much for them.
Okay.
I'm a teacher, and I teach business studies. And I keep wondering, who are these people that is in charge of designing this kind of program?
All right.
I don't know which people can talk to.
Okay.
People in charge of this kind of thing to handle and correct this problem.
Okay. Thank you very much, Austin, for calling. Now, Austin was raising the fact that some of the students are very young. They're quite too young for the subjects they are taught at certain classes. He cited an example of an age 10, 11, 12, learning business studies, for example, the shorthand and the very complex things. So he's talking about the fact that who are those designing the curriculum for such classes, because those subjects are too heavy for the students to handle.
Business studies, I don't think so. But number one, if you, I heard him mention 9, 10. If your child is 9, 10, even 11, the children should going into primary JSS 1 should actually be 11 plus. That's the law. That's what they should be when they enter JSS 1. Let's get that straight. So that's that. Now, business studies curriculum in JSS 1. I don't think it's so heavy. I think it's just fine. Yeah, shorthand. They're learning, shorthand, stuff and all that. It's just, to me, I think for my students, business studies is one of those, they find it very fascinating and it's cheap. It depends on the teacher, really. You can actually teach, like I sometimes joke to people, you can teach a 1-year-old how to do quadratic equations. It just depends on the strategy you use. So it's about the methodology. Sometimes the content of a subject becomes irrelevant if you're using the right method. If you're using the right methodology to get across to the child, children will learn just about anything. That's why this time in their lives are so exciting. That is why it's so important that whatever information we're giving to them now, we make it exciting. Education should be fun. The more fun it is, the more they're going to learn. Their capacity to learn is not what is in question. It's how we are presenting it. If you're going into a JSS 1 classroom.
Okay, let's just speak this other caller. Yes. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, you're speaking with Kingsley. I'm calling from Kaduna State.
Okay, Kingsley from Kaduna State. Go ahead, Kingsley.
Okay, I want to talk about the issue of WAEC. Why students doing WAEC?
Okay.
I think for me, really, every day they complain of students failing mathematics, English. I think for me, what I'm expecting is just WAEC. We should come out and tell Nigerians, tell the principal, the school, these are the area why students fail. Not all the time they complain, they say math, they say English. And for me, I will not blame the students until they find out the reasons why they say WAEC and why they say math and English and other courses.
Okay. All right.
This thing will still continue. So for me, I'm expecting the WAEC to come out and tell them these are the areas you work upon so that you pass your WAEC. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Kingsley. All right. Kingsley just corroborated what you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So you were saying about the curriculum.
So I'm saying that
the style of teaching.
The style of teaching.
And we know we hear this Montessori teaching style. Really,
the Montessori is for babies, and Montessori education is a very specialized kind of teaching, very, very specialized, and most people are unable really to do the entire Montessori traditional teaching. It's not a very easy form of teaching, okay? But it's meant for junior schools and that. But when we talk about styles of teaching, there are different ways to get information to young people. A lot of our teachers are not creative. Again, I don't blame the teachers because they were not taught. A lot of teacher training colleges in our country are just still teaching teachers to come out and lecture the children. And today's children are not children to be lectured. There's so much going on, even in terms of developmentally, that our children are not able to sit down the way we were able to sit down in class in those days. We didn't have nearly as much artificial, sweeteners in our system when we were in school.
All right.
But today's children deal with that.
Okay. Let's pick this other caller. Hello, good morning. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, good morning. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Okay. Okoro from Kaduna.
Okay, Okoro from Kaduna. Okay, go ahead, Okoro. Okay, we just lost Okoro. Okoro, you could still call back, dialing the number showing on your screen, and do well to turn down the volume of your TV set. Okay, so the style would enable the students show willingness to learn.
Yes, my students, for example, when we do shorthand and typing, people have asked me, why are you still teaching them how to type on old typewriters? I said because it's the most standard way to make anybody learn anything. Practicalize it. The very act of sitting behind a typewriter is in itself a lot of fun. So to them, it's fun. They're banging away. And then they learn to type very fast. And then they do time tests and all that. And then, of course, the lesson itself is just practicalized by the teacher. The more practical it is, the more the children, the more they appreciate it and learn it. If a child doesn't appreciate the content of what you're giving to them, that's when they're going to forget it. But if it's being properly taught, it's not being lectured at them, there's no reason why they shouldn't learn it.
All right. Now, speaking of the number of tertiary institutions we have in the country and the fact that millions want to be educated, but sometimes they're being turned down because of space and other reasons. Some Nigerians stick to online learning where they do a course from a foreign school outside. They do everything online and they get their result, which also has the name of the institution. But with the new policy of NUC saying that it would not recognize certificates from foreign schools that do not have a direct contact with the student. What's your take on that? It's not really fair for them.
Well, it's really not fair. Even the students themselves, it's not fair to say, oh, I'm a university graduate and I never set foot on a campus. The campus experience is part of what makes you a graduate. The physically being on campus is what makes you a graduate.
Okay, so before you continue, let's just pick this caller.
Okay.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Benue State.
From Benue State. What's your name?
Ocheme Emmanuel.
Ocheme Emmanuel. Okay, go ahead.
Ocheme Emmanuel.
Yes, I got that. Ocheme Emmanuel. Go ahead.
Ocheme Emmanuel.
Yes, go ahead. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Emmanuel, go ahead.
We're talking about the issue of motivation of teachers.
Yeah.
So I'm watching you live from Benue State.
Okay, thank you.
And with the problem we have in the primary school in Benue State, we are not being paid for the past 8 months now. And how do you look at that? And how the teacher will be encouraged in teaching well in the classroom?
Okay, that's quite an issue. Thank you, Emmanuel, for calling. Okay, so a quick...
Teachers have not been
paid for 8 months in Benue State primary school.
It's sad because supposedly primary schools are under the local government schedule. And I don't know why the local governments, of course, the local governments will then tell you that the states did not give them their allocations, so they did not pay. It's really a mess. Like I said, education should not be politicized. It should never be politicized. There should be the Ministry of Education, the schools that are under, them, they should deal with the schools directly. Because passing it through, I don't know why that was done. I mean, there must be some reason behind it over the years that they've always said, okay, local government. But with education, when we play around with the lives of our generations, because that's what it is, I wonder if we're really thinking of tomorrow. We keep talking about, oh, Nigeria has, we're not doing this, we're not doing that, we don't have... I actually heard a politician say many years back, Nigeria has no future. And I was very, very sad and very infuriated by that because I said, what are you saying? It doesn't make any sense that a nation where we say we love our children so much, adults will make statements like that. Because when you say there is no future for Nigeria, it's actually a curse on the children.
Yeah.
But when we do things like this to education too, we are damaging the psyche of our children. Children can go to school and have teachers, whining about the fact that they haven't been paid. You can't blame the teachers. They also have families of their own to take care of. But and this is all they're doing. So there is a problem, a fundamental problem with the way we are treating education.
Okay. So like your comment on the NUC policy on seeking foreign certification
I was saying that to me, it's a decision that's fine, but there needs to be an alternate arrangement made. Like here, like I was saying, if there's so many people not getting into university when they are ready to get into, there needs to be an interim program arranged for everybody, for them. What can they be doing in the meantime? Do they go on and learn a trade? that they can actually use to establish something for themselves, a cottage industry or so. There has to be something we can do. And I remember that Dr. Obi Ezekwesili was talking about a bottleneck in our system and the need to ease that bottleneck. But that's what we're talking about now. The fact that there's a group of people, they're stuck in between levels, that is where they want to move from one to the other, but there is a holding pattern because there are not enough vacancies at the various universities, so they are stuck. What do these people who are stuck, what do they do? How do we ease out the tension in that bottleneck? Do we create, for example, a one-year program that says, okay, you've not gotten into any tertiary institution, come and learn a vocation. Now, while you are learning that vocation, one of several things might happen to you. You might discover, oh, I really have a flair for this. I'm going to go do this first, and then do it. And then we encourage them later on. You know, education is a lifelong thing. So, yeah, you're doing this thing now. We might then discover that such a child went to this vocational school. Maybe he was initially planning to go do medicine. He went into the place and did something else and discovered, oh, I have a flair for business. I'm really enjoying this. And years off. That's one space that has just opened up in going to medical school that was already a problem. Initially, that child was beginning to mark time, wanting to go into medical school, but at the end of the day, his interests has shown him that maybe I wouldn't have really enjoyed doing this. So there are lots of things that can happen in a year that, of course, there are also negative things that could happen where the person just ends up not going anywhere. But if we plan it, okay, we always talk about a hidden curriculum. We need to plan for that 1 year, that interim period for all our young people so that we don't lose them, they don't get lost. And then channel them eventually into other areas. I think something like that would work.
Well, in defense, this people who gain admission online talk about the fact that, okay, since I was idle, and they even say that even the education online is quite rigorous because they go through assignments, go through tests, and
I know, but that is not what makes education. You never set foot in a university. You think about when you were at the university. The social interactions that you go through at the university is what makes you come out. And you can honestly say, I am a graduate. There are other things, there are hidden...
Okay, let's just pick this call. Hello, good morning.
Hello?
Yes, good morning. Tell us your name and where... Yes. Turn down the volume of your TV set.
Hello?
Yes, turn down the volume of your TV set. Thank you.
Good morning.
Have you done that?
Hello?
All right, thank you. Please turn down the volume of your TV set when you want to call in. And that caller, you could still call back, dialing the number shown on your screen. But please turn down the volume of your TV set before calling in. All right, you were saying about the social interaction.
I said, so there is a lot more that goes into a university degree than just, oh, I sat behind a computer and I did a lot of assignments and I did projects. And you never see your project coordinator one-on-one. He never has a conversation with you. You see, there's much more to a degree than your ability to answer questions online.
All right, let's just pick this older caller. Okay. Hello, good morning. Yes.
Good morning.
Okay, tell us your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Jibrin Tijani. I'm calling you from Nasarawa State.
Okay, Jibrin from Nasarawa. Go ahead.
Okay. Talking about the problem of education in Nigeria, the problem is not all about the policy. The policy are fantastic, but the implementation, if we talk about all our politicians, they are the ones in power. They formulate all these policies, but yet their children go abroad. They neglect our educational systems. The infrastructures are not on ground. The work environment is not encouraging. How do you expect the teacher to work and teach the children, to give them the best? That's my take.
Okay.
Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Jibrin. Okay, implementation is actually a very key issue Jibrin just mentioned. All right, since you said that the NUC policy is quite good on the...
It's good in the sense that, but they haven't, you see, it's good, but they need to provide an alternative.
All right. Now let's talk about the cost of education in Nigeria. The reason why most students will go for the public federal universities is because of how affordable it is. And even when private universities could give them the quality they want, they shy away because of the cost. So what could be done to making education less burdensome for parents who want to pay their student tuition and, of course, get them quality education?
You know why I'm smiling?
Why?
Because our nation is one where we love to tell ourselves that certain things ought to be free and it ought to be cheaper. Education can't be cheap. It cannot be cheap. Good quality education will come at a price. Having said that, we want government to subsidize education? Fine, they should. But we still must pay for it somewhere. Somehow, somebody is going to pick up the tab. Now, let's start with primary school education and public school education. Because by the time we're getting into tertiary education, remember, it just gets higher. But when you start with primary school education, for example, over the years in this country, government has continued to tell Nigerians that education can be free, totally free, in primary school. And then we go and look at the primary schools that government has made totally free. And we don't want to put our children there. And so people start running off to, for private schools. And then everybody's setting up a private school. Somebody sets up a one-room, this size room, and calls it an international school. And parents who don't know any better will go ahead and put their children there.
Okay, let's just pick this call before you continue. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Tell us your name and where you're calling from. You're calling from where?
Okini, Kogi State.
Okini, Kogi State. Okay, your name, please.
From Okini.
Yes, I mean your name. Your name. Peter. Hello? Okay, Peter, go ahead. Go ahead with your question, your contribution.
I'm Peter along here.
Okay, I got that. Go ahead, Peter.
I'm from the education system of the teachers talk about. Yes. From the teachers talk about. Now the factor that train public sector, public schools, is one parent and staff salary.
Okay. Okay.
And this has affected the entire staff, psychologically and physically.
Okay.
Even a health-wise. About 30 teachers died. Just like I got about 5 minutes ago. 30 teachers died.
Okay.
So this is the last thing. They have destroyed the public speech.
All right. Okay.
So talk about this the other time. Not for this.
Okay.
We want to allow them and make solutions. So this is because they only don't care about the people in Nigeria. So that of the solution is enough.
Okay.
We know about last week, they said the rate last year. And the university has left them up with
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so very much for calling, Peter. Although I could hardly pick what you were saying, but Peter mentioned the fact that Kogi State teachers are also being owed salary, which he complained about affecting the psychology as a teacher. Yes.
I mean, there's nobody who works and doesn't want to get paid. I mean, and this is actually right across the entire country right now. There are lots of states that are owing their teachers.
Okay. You were talking about the cost of education.
So I was saying that we keep telling the people that education can be totally free. And that's not really fair because we're not being very honest. Somebody picks up the tab, and if it's not going to be government, somehow it's going to come back to the person. And if it comes back to you as poor education for your children, is that what you asked for? You wanted something totally free, and nothing in life is ever really free. So we need to get ourselves to a point where we let people understand that education is not free. I mean, the other day, LASU raised their fees, and then the students went on a rampage and did some very, very silly things. I think it was totally uncalled for. And then the Lagos State government decided to lower the fees again. And I said to myself, well, how long are they going to go? Because every time they do that, the students are going to rampage, and then they're going to go down again. But what they were planning to do with the increase isn't going to get done. Unless, of course, they were not being very honest to start with. So there was something, they had money, but they just wanted more money for no reason. But every time fees are raised, there needs to be, this is what we want to do with the fees. This is why we are raising the fees. If people agree with you, then go ahead and do it. So education, it can't be free. And when people say it's too expensive, I always say to them, look around you. There must be another one that you can afford. It's like in the US, you can't go to, a Big Ten university. I mean, for example, people say, well, they can't go to one of the big fours, Yale, Harvard, and all. You can't afford those ones. Okay, try one of the Big Ten. You can't afford the Big Ten, try the Big 8. And then, of course, you can go to state universities. Those are cheaper still. But not everybody can afford a big university. The only thing I would say to people is, when you want to go to a university, any university, whether it's private or public, make sure that they are accredited. Make sure that what they are giving you there is what you really should be getting.
All right, quickly, as a round off on the show today, looking at our topic, education passing through the eye of a needle, what could this current administration do to make education a whole lot enjoyable, a whole lot better, a whole lot giving them the results of what they actually bargained for before subscribing to it at the end of the day?
I'm just praying for the government that they would start by they will need to work, first of all, with the implementation process. If we could have better implementation of all policies, I mean, they must work on that. How do we implement our national policy on education? There's so many things they need to do about that to put it in proper perspective for everybody. There are rules they will have to put in place because nobody is monitoring what's happening in education in this country. And that's really where the problems are. If you're monitoring education, then you would then monitor teacher training as well, because the quality of teachers we're getting isn't what we should be getting. That goes all back to the university level, the teacher training colleges. So all of that must be a part of the design, the program, the design, with, of course, one thing in mind: excellence. How do we should stop being mediocre in anything we do. I mean, we've come of age as a nation, even though we still seem to be crawling. But we can begin by insisting, if we're not going to do it at all, do it well. Don't even start it. So government should be looking at working on the inspectorate, ensuring that every school that puts up a banner that says, "I'm a school," is doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you so very much, Anthony and Omosage, for being on the show. It's been wonderful talking education in Nigeria. And the very important thing is that at the end of this discussion, we want to see solutions, practical implementation on all of the advice the wonderful academic talked about, and we're hoping that this change administration will actually implement a whole lot of positive change in the education sector. Thank you so very much for being a part of Core Digest today, and thank you for calling in, because your contributions are quite important, so as you can contribute on this matter to set the agenda for the government in power. This is time we call it a day on Core Digest. Thank you so very much on behalf of all the crew who worked on the show. Till we come your way tomorrow, keep it locked on Core TV News, and we'll be willing to give you all of the things you need as it relates to information gathering and education as it is. Have a nice day. My name is Omotayo Alo. Bye for now.
You can now watch Core TV News live from anywhere in the world on our website, www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to Core TV Primetime Days.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. On Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click Core TV, leave a space, then News. Core TV News, a 24-hour news station.